Hey there, internet friends. Welcome to another episode of That Nerdy Site Show, a weekly podcast where the team members from That Nerdy Site get together to talk about our lives and all of the nerdy things we love about them. I'm your host, Trevor Starkey, and joining me this week we have Cameron Abbott. How you doing, Cameron?
Hey, what's going on, nerds?
What is going on? And Frank Bazzani. How you doing, Frank?
I'm doing good.
Excellent. So today we're going to be talking about stuff like everybody's golf. We're going to be talking about Final Fantasy VII Remake a little bit because Frank has finished that. I sat down with a whole bunch of Apple TV stuff, so I have thoughts on Schmigadoon and Ted Lasso Season 1. And then we will kind of hit up Cameron's thoughts on a Stardew Valley mod, as well as his updates on NoPixel GTA 5, and Frank's thoughts on Astrobot now that he has finished that, as well as Wreckfest on the PS5. And specifically, I believe its haptic feedback is what he's excited to talk about there.
Absolutely.
Before we dive into any of that, though, a little bit of housekeeping for you. If you like what you hear, please remember to like, subscribe, rate, review, share the podcast with your friends. And if you're feeling extra generous, you can always support us on Patreon at patreon.com/thatnerdysite, just like all of our wonderful Patreon producers do. Before we actually dive into any of the other stuff, you guys mentioned a couple things that you did kind of outside of the gaming and nerd sphere and stuff like that I wanted to touch on first. Cam, you in the lead-in into everybody's golf, you just were playing some golf. So how's playing some Top Golf?
Top Golf, for those of you who don't know, is essentially a
it's like a driving range, right?
Yeah, it's essentially a multi-tiered driving range with but it's fully tracked. So when you are hitting your ball out there, it tracks where you hit your ball, and they have a bunch of different game setups that you can do. They even have an Angry Birds integration, where it does a full AR version of Angry Birds, where you depending on where you're launching your ball, you will knock over barrels and stuff, kill pigs, and it's great.
Yeah, I've seen I've seen somebody do that on I saw somebody share their story of playing it on Instagram or something like that. And then I watched the guy take the shot, and then I watched the person zoom over to the camera where there was Angry Birds. I was like, that's a weird thing. Is she just playing Angry Birds while he's playing golf? And you telling me that there's this integration makes it make a lot more sense now.
Yeah. Not only that, but the Angry Birds gamification of the different birds being different things is actually implemented. So if my last one's a bomb, the big black bird that's going to be a bomb, cool, I'm going to launch it right into this last structure, kill it, kill the pig and win and get all these points. Nope, I skewed my shot. Cool, it went into the water behind it. Great. Full on has those moments. It was a lot of fun. For most people, I don't think know. I have not publicly talked about it a whole lot, but I actually have arthritis. I have early onset rheumatoid arthritis, and playing golf flared it up pretty bad. So
I imagine, especially because we've been having the rainy weather and stuff, which also typically flares up people's arthritis and stuff. So yeah, imagine there was not not the greatest of combinations there, but
it actually kind of was awesome though, because it was super muggy. I would have preferred it not being so muggy and humid and gross.
Yeah.
But we had an overcast morning, and so when we went, it was totally overcast. It was perfect weather for it.
Yeah, I mean, if I were to ever get into golf, I would never play it during the summer months here in Arizona unless it was a rainy day or something like that. That's the only time I'd be okay, yeah, I'll go and venture outside for this kind of weather, but not when it's 112 degrees out there. So yeah.
And the thing is, I own my own set of clubs. I used to golf pretty regularly, and I forgot being as I don't saying I'm out of shape, because I'm still a shape. It's just more spherical than I would like. But I not being as physically active as I've not been for the last couple of years. It was I'm things are burning, and it's oh yeah, that's right. When you move your body in any sort of form of exercise, it works it, and it's man, it actually felt really great. And just getting to swing clubs again. I was disappointed, of course. It's been almost it's been several years since I went golfing, but to see my drive be as poor as it was then, I was this is bad. This is one of the things I want to do once I start getting in better shape soon is like definitely go golf more. So, and I might like, and that's the thing. I'm a Top Golf guy now. I loved it. I had a great time. I won our first game, and it was great. Like I'm like I forgot just like how much fun and like the worst part of my game. Trevor knows this because we took Logan out to Golfland.
To doing some mini golf.
Doing some mini golf. Yeah, it's never fun for me. I'm terrible at putting. My putt game is the worst part of my golf game. 100%. I'm terrible at putting. So bad at it. So bad at it. Trevor can definitely attest to it and testify to it. How many holes behind was I from you guys by the end of it?
I don't even remember, but yeah, I had forgotten about that, but yes, it was like me and Logan were up there, and then you were just constantly like if we were playing by like the 6-stroke limit or whatever, you probably 6-stroked like half of the holes at least.
100%. One at least. In fact, I actually think I 6-stroked like out of it like the first couple holes too.
Yeah.
I'm not good at putting. I'm bad at it. I hate it. I've never had fun putting. I went to Golfland to be like, let's go do something fun with Logan.
Mm-hmm.
I knew what was going to happen.
Yeah.
So driving ranges for me are super fun because I love like hitting balls out to like just out in the middle of like just knocking them into the middle of nowhere and gamifying it, giving me like some scores and stuff and some like areas to knock it into is super fun.
That's right. You lost your you lost your ball like partway through on it when we played, didn't you, or something? So you couldn't even finish with us.
That is accurate.
Yeah. Like you knocked it out into like one of the ponds or something like that, where it was like the whole like because it's mini golf, and so they had like the bricks around everything or something, so you're not like supposed to knock it off the course, but somehow Cameron found a way.
Yep.
Yeah.
Proving once and for all that putting is bad. I don't like it.
I had completely forgotten about that. Yeah, like I mean, I've never really been much of a golfing person. There was like a driving range that I went to a couple times growing up with my my dad. It was like there was a mini golf course and then a driving range. Like it was like not a name brand thing. It was like long before the era of Top Golf and stuff like that. I went like once or twice to that with my dad and his set of clubs. Never was really for me. Like mini golf was much more my speed, but I remember Top Golf was like one of the go-to like, hey, we're planning a fundraising event, so let's do like Top Golf for like our big donors and stuff like that when I was in the nonprofit side of things. So now that I know what it kind of actually is, that makes a lot more sense.
It's super fun too. Like also they have like food and drinks and like booze, which it was 10:30 in the morning, and so like I was thinking about it, but I was still pretty tired, so I got something with caffeine in it instead. So.
There you go. Well, we will be back for a little bit more of your golf thoughts and everybody's golf in a little bit. But Frank, you mentioned you also went you went to a concert yesterday. So tell us a little bit about the concert that you went to.
Yeah. So it ended up being a great time. I live in Austin, and I ended up road tripping out to Dallas for the Saturday night concert, which was Green Day, Fall Out Boy, and Weezer on the Hella Mega Tour, which I think definitely lives up to its name. Because I mean, I know not everybody is probably into those bands, but especially like I have always been, and especially for like the time I grew up in, they were even more gigantic back then. But this was even. In 2021, they still filled an arena, like with people, and like they all put on really great shows. And especially the one thing that really blew me away was Green Day, because like they put on such an amazing performance. And Billy Joel like is out there, and I feel like it's 1998. Mm-hmm. Like he is still just as energetic and so excited to be doing this as if it was their second tour ever. Like, and that's one thing that like everyone else like put on a great show too, but that was one thing that I think definitely like blew me away. And he did the most like crowd work and trying to get people hyped up and like getting people to like sing and interact and stuff. They did a cover of Rock and Roll All Night by Kiss, which I thought was really interesting, because that was like I had never heard of them doing like covers at their shows before, but they started playing that and I was like, that's not one of their songs, that's weird, but like everybody was pretty into it.
Nice.
But it was nice, and I think ultimately one of the nice things about it too was it was just nice to kind of be back out and kind of be in kind of a space like that, and a lot of people still wearing masks and stuff, and I think most people were still pretty much vaccinated, and because that's actually they pulled one guy up on stage, but he had to show his vaccination card before they would let him on stage, and then he got to do a guitar like solo, and then he just let him keep the guitar.
Nice.
Right.
Yeah, so that again, a lot of crowd interaction with Green Day, and that was super awesome. And that's what even Weezer and Fall Out Boy were great too. And so that's what it was just such a great time. And I think everybody was the energy was definitely there. Everybody was just so excited to and ready to have a good time. And then there was another part of the night I think highlighting that I wanted to highlight that was super fun is that during when they were setting up for Green Day after Fall Out Boy had already gone on and kind of Green Day was the big closer, they were just playing music as they normally do to keep people entertained, and they started playing Bohemian Rhapsody. And
Nice.
everybody in the entire arena is singing along to Bohemian Rhapsody, and then at the end there's just this round of applause. And I turned to the people I was with and I was like, that's so crazy that Queen is such an amazing band. They got a round of applause and they're not even fucking here. They just played the recording on Spotify through the speakers.
Oh, it wasn't even a band playing it. It was just the music played Bohemian Rhapsody and everybody got, okay, that's cool.
Yeah, I mean, that's why Queen's the greatest band of all time. Suck it, Beatles.
All right, we're not diving into that whole
start a flame war in the comments.
So I've never really been much of a concert goer, but the Green Day stuff in particular stands out to me because in the very brief stint when I was in college where I was in a band, we covered a handful of Green Day songs and stuff like that. So I immediately I think back of playing them on drums, but then also they did a Broadway musical of American Idiot, the album, and included orchestrations, and the band was very heavily involved in kind of the producing of the thing. And Billy Joe, not Joel, went in at one point on the Broadway run of the show as one of the characters. They basically got him to come in and do the character for a run of a couple months or something like that. And it is a very energetic role in the show and stuff like that. And he was going nuts and going crazy about it and stuff like that. So it's that doesn't surprise me at all that he's still out there doing that on the shows and stuff. But yeah, definitely. I remember was it in the summer game thing or something like that? Weezer had a song in that, and I was like, oh, I have not seen Weezer in many years because the image I always have of them is the music video that's set in Happy Days or whatever.
Yeah, Buddy Holly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, that's ancient. Holy crap.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But that is where they are locked in my mind, and they never grew up past that. Basically, it's that kind of thing. And so seeing them in 2021 and being oh yeah, no, that's all of those guys are a lot older. Fall Out Boy, they're probably the youngest of that band. But definitely is oh yeah, those are guys in their 40s and 50s now. that is weird to think about. But hey, that is definitely music of a generation that I grew up with. Weezer probably less than the other two. I just never really got into Weezer, but I definitely have a lot of fond memories of Green Day songs. In particular because I like the song, the show American Idiot, the album of American Idiot is I know it very well. But then a lot of their mainstays prior to that as well. And then Fall Out Boy was another one that I that hit probably at the time of high school going into college for me. So it was when I wasn't paying too much attention to music, and I mean, again, I never really paid too much attention to music, but I remember them jumping out to me on the radio and stuff like that and being oh, I really like a lot of these songs, and would go out and seek out and just play some of them on YouTube or something like that, or create a Pandora list back when I had when I was doing that kind of thing, and I would listen to those songs and whatever spun out from there. So that's very cool. So Weezer was the opener, and then Fall Out Boy, and then Green Day to close.
Yeah, exactly. And there was a fourth band there that was barely kind of on the title
opener
card. Is the real opener, and people were still coming in and buying merch and stuff. And then Weezer came on, and it's funny that you mentioned it because you kind of helped clear up something in my head where Weezer's stage set, all of the stuff they wheeled out and put up for them, is the same exact set from the Game Awards. Okay. And, there was a second where I was kind of looking at it and I was why does that look so familiar? Because it's this pink and blue set and it has the giant W above it. And I was oh, wow. They literally just used their whole setup, I guess.
Yeah, no, it wasn't the Game Awards. It was like the kickoff of the Summer Game Fest thing. I think
that's what it was.
That Keeley did. Well, that's very cool. Yeah, the last concert I went to was, I don't know, like probably a decade ago now or something like that. But it was a Bare Naked Ladies concert, and it was like Bare Naked Lady, and it was like in one of the casinos here in Arizona or something like that. That's, you know, they're far away from like selling out stadiums and stuff. But I remember going to that, and like it was a local band that was like the opening act and stuff like that. They were fine. They did a lot of covers and stuff like that. They might have done a couple original songs, but it was very clear like everybody's here to see Bare Naked Ladies. Yeah. I just was never my scene, but I'm glad you had a great time. And I remember like, especially pre-pandemic and stuff, you were often going out there and going to see shows and stuff like that. So very cool that you were able to do that. So with that out of the way, let's dive back into the core like ideas that we were going to talk about already for the show. So back to you, Cam, and we kind of all have some thoughts on this one, but because you got into golf, you were hopped in and played some Everybody's Golf. So how was that?
Yeah, I mean, it was great. I owned the game previously, but I had to sell it back when I sold off most of my game collection after college, when I needed I needed cash in order to move into a place and pay rent, and I hadn't found a job yet. So when that happened, so I haven't been able to play it in like 2.5, 3 years, and being able to play it again was great. Just picking back up right where I left off on it. It's just great to have like a fun golf game. Mm-hmm. I actually picked it up earlier in the week before I went to Topgolf, but like I just saw it was on sale. It was on the PlayStation sale. Immediately thought, okay, well, this is like, it's never going to get cheaper than this. Buy it now and just be done with it. And that's exactly what I did. And I've just been having fun with it. Just playing a couple. Was it
sparked by like everybody playing like this Mario Super Rush on Switch, and you just being like, that game isn't great, so I'm going to play the better one, Everybody's Golf? Kind of
like that's definitely influenced me quite a bit. The way that people have been playing Mario's Golf, but everybody's still saying Everybody's Golf is a better golf game, which is super disappointing. I was really hoping Mario Golf would be good, but yeah, no, it was definitely, I think, spurred by a few different factors, but also I just really love Everybody's Golf. It's a really great game, and it's just filled with just absolute great classic PS1 PlayStation charm when it comes to like the characters and everything, the character models and it's like what was it back on the PlayStation back in the day? They called it
was it Let's Golf? No.
Hot Shots Golf.
Hot Shots Golf.
Was it Hot Shots Golf?
It was Hot Shots Golf, yeah. Hot Shots Golf was just it evokes so many memories back of playing Hot Shots Golf with my friends, which is like, we were a bunch of kids from suburban Mesa, Arizona, like Phoenix, Arizona area, like playing a digital golf game.
Yep.
It wasn't even like the branded, PGLA or the PGA. It wasn't like the sports game. It was like this cartoony one on a PlayStation. It was just fun. We just had fun playing it, and like I just remember that, and like so I get a lot of like nostalgic enjoyment out of Everybody's Golf as well.
Nice. So. Yeah. I remember when I went to E3 a few years back, like the one year I went to E3, it was like a month or two before Everybody's Golf came out. And so they had just kind of like a couple stations where it was like basically like 2 back-to-back setups. So they had 4 stations, and like you could wait in line to play some of their bigger games or something like that. Or you could like just hop up at this booth or the NAC 2 booth that was like right next to it. I remember very distinctly. And I was like, well, I never played any of the Hot Shots Golf or anything like that, but there's no line to play this. I'm at E3. I should play games. So I hopped in and played Everybody's Golf. And they had it so that on every station, like the character creator that they'd done was basically Shuhei Yoshida. So
nice.
I was basically hopping
the
there.
Perfect human being.
Exactly. And playing as Shu. And yeah, I had a great time with it. I played like a handful of rounds and stuff. And then when the game eventually came out, I picked it up and played it, for a good few weeks there, when like, especially in the Kind of Funny community, when like Greg and everybody was like getting behind it and stuff like that. And
yeah, actually, that's the funny thing. It's like my old squad that I used to roll with in Everybody's Golf was Barrett Courtney, Andy Cortez, and like, those guys just playing those games. And I think that was actually before Barrett started working at Kind of Funny.
I mean, yeah, it would have
He
been.
was
It
still
would have been
working
before
at-
that he might have been working at IGN at that point.
I think he was working at IGN at the time. So, yeah. So like just like hang out with my friends, my dudes, just like playing everybody's golf. So good.
Yeah. But yeah, it's one of those like golf games. I occasionally like get the urge to hop back into that, but since sports really just aren't my thing in general, it's I play it for a few days or whatever for a couple weeks, get really into it and have a good time with it, and then just kind of bounce off and move on to the next thing. But I definitely had like a character creator thing in there and would have fun kind of running around those tracks and
I forgot
and
I forgot that I accurately like created myself in that game. So I was like, "Who's this fat schlubby? Oh, it's me."
There you go.
It's
Yeah,
like, who's this weird? Who's this like pale, gross looking like malformation of? Oh, it's me. That's mine. I made that because I wanted it to look accurate. Because you could make it look pretty accurate.
Yeah.
You just make more
It was a good
cartoony
character
version.
creator.
yeah.
It's a great character creator, actually. But yeah, no, I was like that. I'm like, why is this person wearing just like what does this person look like? They saw The Sopranos and thought jumpsuits were like the height of fashion. And it's it's me.
You were limited in the outfits you could put on until you like unlocked more things throughout the play. But
but I unlocked things. Like I backed into it. I was like, I looked through it. I was like, did I never unlock anything? It's like, oh no, I unlocked things. For some reason, I just thought
this is the way to
jumpsuit
go. Yeah.
on a golf course. And when I thought about it, it's like, if I had a choice of any golfing attire, I 100% would be out there with a jumpsuit. Like,
there you go.
Just that's what I would do. I'd be wearing that kind of like shiny, like sweatsuit jumpsuit combo.
Well, I mean, like
on.
You mentioned The Sopranos. I know exactly what you're talking about. Yeah, like that attire. Yeah. Well, that's very cool. Yeah, I'm glad you hop back into it. It's as you talk about that, I'm like, oh, I definitely made myself, but if I hop back in and like looked at what my character creator would be, it'd be like whatever I looked like at that point in time, because my physical appearance, or especially like with my hair and stuff, tends to just like change on a whim. Like on those days where I'm like, all right, I'm gonna shave everything off. Like I've had a lot of days recently where I'm like, do I just want to like go in and just buzz all my hair off? I haven't, but I kind of want to do that. So,
do you not do that, especially in the modern political climate?
No, not.
Like,
I would not go. I would not go like skinhead bald, like shave my head bald, but I would like buzz it down or whatever.
Yeah,
I think I'd be
That's
fine. I'd be fine on that front. But yeah. It would be much more akin to like when we buzzed my head at Extra Life.
At Extra Life, oh, that was fun. Yeah. Actually, no, it wasn't fun. It was gross. It was really gross.
Yeah. I would do a much better job of preparing for that. But yeah,
just thinking about it, that rat king hair that you had.
Yeah.
Ugh.
Yeah, not ideal for what we ended up doing with that. But very cool. I'm glad you are enjoying everybody's golf, and I'm glad it got you excited or like into the gamification mode of Topgolf stuff. So very cool.
Totally, yeah.
Well, with that, let's switch back over to you, Frank. You mentioned you finished Final Fantasy VII Remake. And to clarify, or to be like up front, you specifically played the PS4 version of it, because this was largely, you'd started playing this, I think, before we got you the PS5.
And I finished it before I got it too, and it was one of those like just missed it by a couple days.
Yeah, so
I almost wanted to go back and just like replay the whole game.
Yeah, and then Cam and I know have both finished the game. Obviously, Cam, did you ever go in and finish or play through the Yuffie DLC?
Yes, I did. I actually beat it.
Okay, so we can maybe do some like we'll get kind of your thoughts on the base game there, Frank, and then maybe we'll talk a little bit about the Yuffie DLC, spoiler free stuff.
And I'm a bit familiar with it too, so yeah, feel free to talk about it.
Cool. So yeah, what did you think? Because this was definitely one I remember in our Game of the Year conversation. You had not played it. I kept thinking you had played it. But you had not. It was just Cam and I that played it last year. So what were your Final Fantasy VII Remake thoughts? But did you like, and in the broader scope, like do you have like a relationship with Final Fantasy VII, the original game, at all?
Yeah, so I have kind of a weird relationship with it where I have not played the entire game. I played a bit of it, but it just kind of like the reactor part at the beginning, just messing around with it. But I have like followed it, and I especially in like the later 2000s when it kind of had that resurgence with like Advent Children and Crisis Core, and like those things were very huge at the time. And so like
Dirge of
I
Cerberus, yes.
yeah,
Great
exactly.
games. Mhm.
On PS2, man, we can't forget Vincent.
Dirge of Cerberus, like I have that game, and I started to play it. I never got too far in it. It's one like there's this thing going around Twitter today that was like, what's your Final Fantasy pipeline? And it's basically like, what's the order of games you played Final Fantasy in? And like, I saw a couple people, including Dirge of Cerberus. I was like, I never finished Dirge of Cerberus, so I'm not going to include Dirge of Cerberus. Like, I know some of the big points on it, and that's about it. But yeah, I was like, I did not really want a shooter game that on the PS2 that was Vincent centric.
I did. I got it. I loved it at the time. Looking back on it now, not a great game, but I think it would have been like if they redid that game and put like modern shooting mechanics in it, that game would actually be pretty rad because the story is just bonkers fun, kick-ass stuff, and deals with like stuff that was kind of like largely not implemented in Final Fantasy VII, where it was usually implemented in other games, like Ultima Weapon, Omega Weapon, Chaos, like a lot of stuff that was kind of like classic Final Fantasy stuff. That was, I know Ultima Weapon was in the game.
Yeah, so is Omega.
Omega Weapon was not in Final Fantasy VII.
I believe so. Haven't we talked about this before? Or no, Diamond is the one that gets
Diamond's the one
blown up
yep.
By the Junin reactor at Midgar.
Yep,
that's right. You're right. Omega was not in there.
Yeah, no, like, and so like that's the thing is like Dirge of Cerberus has like deals with like it brings up a lot of like cool Final Fantasy VII like aesthetic, like the kind of style and aesthetic that Final Fantasy VII has as the first sci-fi, like really strong sci-fi leaning Final Fantasy game, and what it does with concepts like Omega Weapon, Chaos, like what are the weapons, what's their deal, and that's answered in Dirge of Cerberus, and it's done in a very cool way, over the top, very PS2 era kind of Final Fantasy Square Enix level stuff, which is like, you know, leaning into like a lot of the like kind of dumb stuff too, but like it's great. I enjoyed it. It has a cool story, cool villains. Everybody has some sort of like gun weapon. It's cool.
All right. Well, back to Final Fantasy VII Remake, and your thoughts there on that, Frank.
Yeah, and so I kind of know the whole story of Final Fantasy VII, and with Advent Children, some of the more expanded lore too. So it's kind of like, it's interesting where I'm not diving in from like a totally fresh perspective, and I do kind of have like a lot of the backstory, but I think that kind of helps in some cases. Like, it's not like it's needed, but it's definitely like when Red 13 shows up, I'm like, it's Red 13. Like, I'm not like, who the hell is this? Like, I was like, oh, this is fun. Like, that's Red 13.
Yeah.
And like, I mean, do we want to do spoilers for it since it's been so long, or how do you feel on that?
I would say, especially because a lot of people might be jumping in like as they get their PS5s or something like that. We don't need to talk spoiler specifics, but I will say very much like in a like it could be considered a spoiler, I suppose, but like the game is very much a sequel to the original Final Fantasy VII more than like the remake people thought of the original Final Fantasy VII, like, which I think is one of the most fascinating like ideas and approaches to that. It is I guess the analog might be like, it is much more the Star Trek reboot than like a whole, like, let's just like retell this story with these characters. Like the events of the original Final Fantasy VII have happened, and as well as like the events of Dirge of Cerberus and Advent Children and all that stuff. And this is like a new spin on it, and the game is about exploring why this is a somewhat new spin on it. When you start seeing like elements, and it happens like very early on even, but like some characters that like died in the original don't die here and stuff like that. And it's like, what is causing this? What's leading to these changes? Which is a very fascinating approach. But just in broad strokes, like what were your thoughts on like the combat and stuff like that?
Yeah, so I mean, overall, I think it's a great game, and I didn't really doubt that it was like a great game. I just wasn't sure if I was gonna like it, but overall, especially like after having completed it, like I really just enjoyed myself the entire time. And even like I kind of hinted at before, like even once I had beat it, I just wanted more. So I was ready to just replay the entire game again. And especially because part of that is like the combat. Like the combat is so good. And by the end, like towards the end of the game, I had come up with this like perfect materia set for Cloud and for Tifa. And I could just and I was playing on easy, as I had noted in one of my earlier podcasts too, which like made things I think too easy at the end of the day. But I didn't want to get stuck at like some thing where they're like I had to go level grind, which I don't think I would have in hindsight, especially because I ended up doing all the side missions and finding all the cats and all the dumb stuff.
Like, it is not, even if you play like through on normal, it's not like grinding. You can grind and you can like, you know, power up your materia and stuff like that, but grinding, like even if you grind through that game, there is a limit. Like you cap out at level 50 and stuff like that, and a lot of the materia doesn't take that much longer to, you know, to max out and stuff like that. So like it's not really a game necessarily designed to be grinded. Like you can do it, but you don't need to, even playing through on normal, and then even playing through on hard mode and stuff like that. It's more about understanding the mechanics of the combat and knowing what materia to use than it is like, oh, I need to be this much more powered up or something like that.
Yeah, no, and I think you're definitely right there. And this was another one. This was a game that definitely like I realized that going through it, and especially I even realized like that thought process of like, oh, I'm gonna get stuck on something and be under leveled and have to level for a long time is like that super really like old JRPG style, but that's like what I associate in my head from the old JRPGs that I couldn't get into. But then with this, I mean, like that's not even there, so already that's not even a problem. And then I did really enjoy the combat and everything going on, and I was like mid-maxing materia, even though I'm already annihilating everything with sword slashes. But I'm like, no, I need to have this materia, so I start with so I already start with the gauges, and then I can do these moves, and I like had this whole thing set up where like by the end, especially like I went back to the arena, and when I was doing like I said, I wanted more. So I went back to the arena and was just trying to fight people, and
you do the challenges and stuff.
Yeah. And I remember fighting through it the first time, and it wasn't like it was super hard, but it took way longer. But then one of the rounds where it spawns in like a bunch of like bandits for you to fight, I started the battle. I'm Cloud. I already have my gauge full. I like go into the menu, and I do the strongest lightning attack. And the way I had my materia set up was so it spreads to everyone.
Range,
And I had that all of that maxed out. So I literally just like the battle starts, he lifts his hands up, and I killed everyone. and then it was like, yeah, you did it. Move on to the next one. And I was just like, that was like in one way it's like broken, but it feels so amazing when you just watch Cloud, like he lifts his hands up and it just like all these dudes just get annihilated. And I the other one I liked a lot too that I used like the whole game was like the deadly dodge, where if you attack out of a dodge roll, he does like a giant like Zelda slash. And like that was always my move that I always love to spam in Zelda, is that giant like circle slash. And so I was like, I loved having that on Cloud. And then eventually same thing where I got the materia where I could put the element on his sword. So I basically had a flame sword the whole time, and like that was just I had such a great time with that. And like all of the characters play great, and that was something that really impressed me, is that they made 4 different characters that have like all these different play styles, and you can set them up completely like how like and even make them variable from there. And then the only thing that I kind of ran into, at least in my gameplay, and I think I maybe just didn't go to enough shops sometimes, is but like I just wish there was like more materia. And I don't even necessarily mean of like more types, because I know this is only part of the game, but like I wish I could get more of the like materia that expands the spells to like more people, or the putting it on my weapon. But at the end of my game, I only had the one, so I gave it to Cloud. And then same thing with the expanding it to people, I had one. Like there was all these things that were really cool, and I understand why that you can't like. I am assuming there may be more, and I just missed it. But that was just something where I was like, I ended up with this like limited set where I had 2 really good builds, but I couldn't really build out Barrett and Aerith the way I wanted to, because Aerith would have been awesome. Like I would have given her all of those like area of effect like bonuses and all that, but I'm like, well, Cloud is the guy I have all the time, so I'm gonna give him the lightning move.
I think you can get like some extras of those types of materia if you do like all of the Chadley stuff.
Mm.
of
I
like
did most of his.
going and scanning all these monsters, and then like beating, like I think like some of his challenges will get you an extra one of those, but then there is an element of like, oh, you can get an extra one if you play through on hard mode or something like that, and find in those areas and stuff like that. So like you can, I think by the end of like a hard mode run, you can probably have like all of the characters in those builds you want. And especially the thing I love, and I always kind of talk about when I talk about the combat, is like I love the combat so much that like hopping in, like doing the hard mode run, where it is like the main differences in hard mode is like you can't use items in hard mode. And if you like save on a bench, it doesn't restore your MP, it'll only restore your HP. So like you have to be like every chapter will like restore your MP at the end kind of thing. And you'll start like a new chapter with a fresh, like fully maxed out stuff. But like you have to be very conservative in how you use that stuff, because you're not going to be able to. So you have to like really rely on the yellow materia for like chakra or prayer to heal your characters and stuff like that. And it just like it made me much more reliant on like strategy in battle, as opposed to just, okay, I can start every battle and just lightning everybody and be done. So yeah, I really appreciated that. And so yeah, if you end up hopping back into that, that might be an interesting thing, especially like I'm very curious, because like deadly dodge and stuff was never a thing I really got into, and that's largely because like, while I certainly do like dodge and parry stuff a little bit more than I used to, like after having played Bloodborne and stuff like that, it's still not what I think of when I think of those games. So like I would attempt to do that, but then I would very quickly just be like, all right, I'm just gonna like rely on the abilities that I have and stuff like that. So
I didn't like, because I know you can block and I know you can parry. I think you can parry if I remember correctly.
Yeah.
If you're like, but I didn't do as much of that as I probably should have. But I definitely like the dodge was one that I just like eventually just like abused, if anything, because it's definitely like it helps to, for me at the least, to like get out of the way sometimes.
Yeah.
But there was definitely times I would be like, okay, well, like especially when the battle starts, I'm like, well, I got to close the gap and get in on them so I can dodge forward and then I can attack out of the dodge. And especially when you get those like, when you're doing like those ad battles, when you're just running through like a tunnel or something, you can just wipe through people. Like, so especially when you start with when I got the materia that lets me start with a gauge already full. So like you can just like shred through people. Yeah.
There's there's an accessory that you can get by beating like the super hard like extra boss in Chadley's thing, but only in hard mode kind of thing. It's called like the Goddardamong or something like that, and it basically like starts whoever you have equipped with a limit break, and then like it will like, even after you use that, it will just consistently like raise your limit break gauge and stuff. So it's not, it like you get your limit breaks way quicker by doing it that way. And I like it was like one of the last things I ended up getting. So for me, the first time I played through, like it was really only helpful for like a few fights at the end of my hard mode run of the game. But when I went back and like replayed it here, when I hopped in and was doing the Yuffie stuff, like it made all of those fights like super easy. And then you can get 2 more in the Yuffie DLC, or not in the Yuffie DLC, but like you play through the Yuffie stuff, and the super hard mode boss that one unlocks, you can like unlock 2 more of those accessories, so you could like fully kit out your team and have everybody basically starting with limit breaks, because by that point you've done everything, like you've done the hardest things you need to do in that game. So like it's basically a reward of like, hey, if you want to play through, here's like playing through the game on super easy mode now. You can start every fight with a full like team of limit breaks and then just like clean house. But yeah, it's a ton of fun there.
Because those limit breaks are so good.
Yeah.
Like, especially like, I think Clouds is the one I use probably the most. But I mean, they were all great. And I love, the one that got me is like, because, well, what got me about it is sometimes Cloud has like voice lines before he starts it. And at one point he called I was fighting a boss and I used the limit break and he called him an asshole before he did the move. And it's like, but it was, if we were like recording me, it's like, I'm like, I pop the limit break and I'm like, get ready for this, asshole. And then Cloud says something like the same thing. And I was like, I'm so glad they put that in there, because like I feel seen right now.
Yeah.
And then he just does all these crazy sword slashes, and because I was on easy, like the boss was already at like half health, so that just like destroyed him with how tough I was at that point. That's actually one last thing I would want to shout out is the boss fights in this game are incredible. Like every single boss, I enjoyed and loved every single one and had fun fighting them all, and some of them are really cool, awesome designs. And one of them like is a thing I realized like I hadn't even seen a boss like that in a game before, and that's like a design thing I had never even thought about, where it kind of like there's don't want to spoil it too much, but there's like split parties, and the boss basically goes between the parties, and then you have to kind of fight it like. And I was like, to me that like blew me away, because like I don't think I've ever played a game that's ever made me do that before, and like I just thought that was like awesome. And again, goes back to the combat, because the combat's super good, and it doesn't matter how they break up the characters and who they put them against. You can do any situation, and it's always fun. Yeah, and like that's something that definitely blew me away about it. And then, go ahead.
I was just gonna say that fight in particular just reminds me I love just the way they incorporate the enemy designs, because that boss in particular is like a normal enemy that you can fight in that part of the game. In the original, but the fact that they kind of like reimagined it in that boss scenario and the like, it makes it that much more special. But there's a nod of like, hey, if you played the original game, a lot of these enemy types, it's like, oh, like I mean, like the big one that everybody talks about is the ghost house that you fight earlier in the game, and like when that appears, it's like, because it's such a weird, obscure enemy in the original game, where it's like, why are you fighting this house? What's the deal with that? And then like the way they recontextualize a lot of those fights for the remake was just like a ton of fun, and they do a really great job of like making it feel like all that stuff like belongs naturally in this world in really cool ways.
I totally agree with that, and I love the world, and I mean, and I liked the world before I ever picked up the game, because like I was already familiar with it, and that, like, out of all the Final Fantasies, like, I mean, I think it's probably a popular opinion, or I mean, I maybe shouldn't say that, but I'm like, I think Final Fantasy VII has like some of the best like world, or at least the one that like captures me. And I know it's funny because it steps away from the fantasy side and goes into this like steampunk modern side, but that's how you get me on board. And I know a lot of people love that setting, and that's why but it's so awesome just being in Midgar and exploring the plates and like all the things they do with that. And like, I mean, again, like, I mean, there's probably just more nice things I could keep saying about it, but it's just a really great game, and I recommend and people check it out. There was one more thing I wanted to highlight, but I just can't think of it. But yeah, it's a great game.
So having played it on PS4, are you going to go back and like play through it on hard mode and try and get the platinum on that? And B, are you going to maybe try and like pick it up again on PS5 on sale or something like that, so you can get you'd have to buy the game outright on PS5, but then I believe you would get the Yuffie DLC, as opposed to like Cam and I that had to like basically buy it as like add the DLC. Is that something that is of interest to you, or is that kind of be like you're kind of like ready to put the Final Fantasy VII like story to rest until the next full game comes out?
I am interested in replaying it, especially on PS5. I don't think I will replay it on PS4, and I definitely won't be going for the platinum in this one. Like, I looked at it, and like, it's not that it's not it's like it's still obtainable. You just have to go through and do it. And I think I could do hard mode. It just, hard mode does sound like harder, but like I feel like I did, like, I played the game like how they wanted me to play it, and I feel like I did it. Like, I was playing like how you would play on hard mode, but I was on easy, and like I could have just been like slashing, but instead I'm like, assess this guy, use this ability, do these things. I'm like spent too much time in the menu messing with stuff, and so that's basically where I spent, like, I think too much time, but especially for the difficulty I was on. But that's where I would be curious to play it on a harder difficulty that kind of pressures me a little bit more into that. And then but if I were, I think I want to replay it, and I think I'll replay it on PS5 at some point, and I think I will play the Yuffie DLC with that. But I just don't, I don't know when. Like, I think I am ready to take a break for now, at least on it. But the way like the Final Fantasy VII Remake ends, and especially how hyped I was on it, I'm just definitely so excited for, like, I need more of this. I'm so just like want more, and I wish that like the sequel to this is like was like somewhat closer or like more
Yeah.
obtainable. Like it's just so ethereal at the moment. And I mean, you know, they don't need to crunch or do anything crazy, but I'm just like, I wish it was like me playing it and they're like, and here's the next one.
Yeah.
Like, because I'm just like, and I'm dying to know where they go with everything. And that the last point I had kind of forgotten, and I think you kind of touched on before, is that like the fact that it's not just like a pure straight remake and they are like kind of doing what they're doing, it has me so much more interested and engaged and fascinated than like, but even if it was just like a 1-to-1, I still think it'd be like a great game.
Yeah. I very much felt the same way when I finished that. I was like, I want the next part of this story now.
Yeah.
And I'm hopeful that because of like how much polish is in that first game and like the characters and the combat and like all of that is done, and now done for both PS4 and the PS5 generations, I'm hopeful that like a lot of the heavy lifting is done and they can lift a lot of those elements and like there's a head start on the next game when eventually they get around to it. I think that can segue into me and Cam talking a little bit about the intermission stuff, which is the Yuffie DLC, which we won't dive into spoilers necessarily, but it is like, I mean, just in the setting of it, and I think this is kind of explored and explained in the trailers, but like you are playing as Yuffie coming into Midgar around the time of the Sector 5 bombing, the Sector 5 reactor. It's
right after. It starts off with it being the Sector 5.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Yeah, basically like that. So it takes place when like Cloud like falls and is off with Aerith, and this is like what's going on in the Sector 7 slums at that time because you're playing as Yuffie and kind of and her whole mission in here. So it's that chunk of the game in the lead up to like, the big Sector 7 moment. But then and it's very much similar combat style. Instead of controlling 3 different characters, you're controlling Yuffie, and Yuffie has like a companion Sonon, who you don't control, but like you can sync up the character and he'll basically do the same attacks that you're doing on enemies and stuff like that. And one of Yuffie's abilities is that she can basically like turn her ninja star like into an element. So like if an element or if an enemy is weak to fire, she can like turn on the fire elemental instead of having to use fire damage or something like that, and it'll do that. It was a fun little, like, it's 2 chapters. And my favorite little bit was probably, again, even there, the end where like you finish that and then it cuts and shows your main core cast of characters after the events of the main game as they're like walking on to their next destination. And so it's them talking, and then it cuts back to Midgar for like a whole other scene of like that just completely blows your mind of like that definitely wouldn't have happened in the original. So it's ideas that get set up at the end of Final Fantasy VII Remake, that were like, wait, what's going on here? Because for anybody that has played these games, because like, well, now like the events of Crisis Core and stuff are coming into and this game specifically has a lot of like Dirge of Cerberus references with like some of the main bosses of the Yuffie stuff are pulled straight from Dirge of Cerberus and kind of bringing everything there full circle. But yeah, then it's very much like, okay, yeah, now nothing is making sense in the chronology and timeline of things of the original games or the original Final Fantasy VII story timeline of things. So it very much was like another one of those like, holy fuck kind of endings, and I just can't wait to see where they go with the story. So yeah, I loved it. What did you think of the Yuffie stuff there, Cam?
Awesome. Yuffie plays super differently than anybody else. She has her own unique style. The synergy combos that she can do with Sonon are fun and great and creative. And it's a little bit jarring at first, but once you get into it and using her and using Sonon and like knowing when to turn on their synchronization and when to turn it off, it creates just like an awesome thing. And it's great because like Sonon's like, he's tanking for Yuffie. And so you get to focus on just doing like the damage aspect of it, not really getting the ire of enemies, and it's great. Yuffie is what I love about her ability set, especially is when she throws out her star, she can keep it out on an enemy, so it just does like a rotating damage on the enemy, and then she can cast long range elemental damage, using the same kind of like setup that she was using with like turning her shuriken on fire or whatnot. So it's great. Love it playing it. Love the way that it ties into like. Because the first place that in the original game, the first place that you can actually run into Yuffie is a forest right outside of Midgar. So it's possible that Yuffie is your first party member when you leave Midgar, like right afterwards. You can run into her because she is like to an important point.
It's a little
she's
bit
an
after.
optional character.
Yeah, she's an optional character. It's not right after you leave Midgar. It's like you have to. It's
the first forest. You have to find the first forest after Midgar.
It's basically you have to go through all the Midgar Zolom stuff. And that whole thing. So you'll have caught chocobos and stuff like that. But yeah, she is an optional character that you can get relatively early on in the game. But you could also play the entire game and not get her at all. But if you do get her, there's a handful of like fun other things that will happen that this sort of somewhat makes reference to. Obviously, her love of materia and desire to get a lot of materia.
I forgot old Yuffie. Like I totally forgot that that's what she was all about. Her whole thing, she's like, I'm a materia hunter.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, and like she's there because they get like the Wutai government got a like piece of information about this. It ties into like, oh yeah, Avalanche is a much larger organization. And when they were, they like Sonon and Yuffie even call it out. They're like, yeah, we're manning up with like the like more focused Avalanche, but like maybe we should have been teaming up with the offshoot because they're actually out there like blowing stuff up and doing stuff.
Yeah, these Splinter Cell guys seem to be doing a lot more like harm against Shinra than this group that we've like aligned with. It's fun. And then so it like what I love about it is it's very clearly like, okay, when she does get intertwined with the core cast in presumably the next installment, like now we know how she's going to play compared to how everybody else currently plays and stuff like that. So we got a whole new vibe for that. I also want to give a shout out to the Fort Condor stuff, which is a ton of fun.
It's awesome.
As a mini
so
game.
Much fun.
The Fort Condor like is a mini game in the original game that's very much like a basically a tower defense game before tower defense blew up in like the mobile market and stuff like that. And it's very much got those kinds of vibes. And yeah, I had a great time with that. Anytime I hopped in and was like, like what I love about it is like you're playing this mini game against other characters in the Sector 7 slums, but it's like it's against NPCs that we met in the original game and stuff like that. And so it's the people you're playing with, none of them are like completely unfamiliar to you really. It is like, you know, as a light spoiler, like one of them is like Roche, the guy on the motorbike from the first game. It's like, hey, he's back and he's hanging out here. And like, I love that, like, if you interact with him, he's clearly looking to hang out with Cloud because of his like infatuation with Cloud from the original game. But instead he'll sit down and play this little tactical strategy game with you. Sure. Why not? So yeah, I loved that whole element. And it very much left me very excited about where they're going to continue telling that story moving forward. I definitely did not do the like super hard boss fight that I alluded to earlier, where you can get a couple of those extra like accessories, because like I tried it once and then it immediately up front is like, hey, this accessory, if you got it in like the main game, you can't use it in this fight. And I'm like, well, fuck, that completely screws up my strategy and stuff like that. And then it was very much like the very like Kingdom Hearts super hard boss fight kind of thing. It is very much that kind of thing where it's like you have to do this pretty much flawlessly or you're gonna have a bad time. And I was like, I don't want to deal with that. That's not that, like, I don't need that.
It is with Tetsuya Nomura leaving the project going forward, like he was really there to like he was the initial director, but he has very much passed on the torch to the guy who's going to be helming it going forward. And they were co-directors on it beforehand, so it is a good transition for him. Very much not the way that Final Fantasy 15 was handled. And And this is a wonderful little like love letter send off in a Nomura style of, here's your perfect hard boss, enjoy.
Yeah.
Because a lot of people were like, it's a Nomura game, but there's no like there's a super hard mode, which is not atypical of a Square Enix game outside of like Kingdom Hearts. Proud mode in Kingdom Hearts is notoriously one of like the hardest things you can do.
So hard. And then you got people who will do it without ever upgrading their equipment.
Level 1 Sora. Yep. Doing
Gross.
things like that.
Gross.
It's crazy. Shout out to Cam Final Mix on Twitter. Friend of ours, friend of the show, friend of the site. Awesome guy who 100% is that dude. Just great. So like having that kind of like Nomura style boss fight at the very like as a little like add-on is great. Just gotta say, like, I really, really loved getting an opportunity to play through it and like what it means to the larger story. But also, it does an incredible job of giving us a look at like some of the Dirge of Cerberus stuff in the era of an active Midgar pre the collection or whatever they called it at the end. I forget what they called the
Yeah, I don't remember
the Final Fantasy VII projects that were put out on the PS2 era.
Mm-hmm.
Like that like getting to see like some of the characters there and being a part of it, and also getting to see like Scarlet, who really wasn't a big part of the game that we got to play in Remake, but had a much larger part in this, and it's great. It's just so good.
Yeah, it was a ton of fun. I very much look forward to, again, just like the next batches. And then I also as I was playing through it on PS5, I also like basically replayed through the original game. Had a great time just like doing that in a very like, I'm like, there's no pressure because I carried over my 90-hour save from the original or whatever. Like with this accessory, I can basically like one hit kill bosses for the most part and stuff. But I had a great time just kind of like going through that. Game still looks gorgeous. Looks even better now on the new gen. Some of the notoriously issued like the doors and stuff look better now. Yay! Yeah, had a ton of fun with that. And I also, in the lead up to that, I did pick up. I don't know if I have it somewhere near me, but I did get Advent Children on like 4K HD DVD or Blu-ray. Like rewatched that and was like, yep, this is still a very bonkers kind of story, but it does like they're clearly using elements and pulling elements from that into this. I liked there's something I guess I don't really want to. There's something I want to touch base with Cam offline on, I guess, because there was something that I thought was very interesting that they kind of like officially make canon-ish in the it was kind of always canon, but it was like you had to know some of the really deep cut kind of references to know it in the original timeline of things, but they more explicitly state some of that stuff in the intermission stuff, which I appreciated as well. So yeah. Moving on from that, I will talk a little bit about I mentioned this, I think, at the top of the show. PlayStation is doing this thing. They announced basically a special promotion where, hey, if you use the Apple TV app on the PlayStation 5, you can get 6 months of Apple TV for free. And I was like, well, I've been hearing a lot of great things about Ted Lasso and Mythic Quest and a couple of the other shows. And I, as a musical theater nerd, have been intrigued by this show Schmigadoon that came out or started coming out a couple weeks ago. So I was like, oh, we'll go ahead and redeem that deal. And I basically spent most of my day on Saturday watching all of Ted Lasso that's out there available now, as well as the first 3 episodes that are available of Schmigadoon. I think first 3, maybe 4. The whatever's out there available of Schmigadoon. So I will talk a little bit about that. So Schmigadoon in particular, I was telling Frank about this a little bit before we started recording, is the premise behind Schmigadoon, if you do not know. Obviously, it is a spoof of the name Brigadoon, a classic musical from like the 40s, 50s, 60s, that like golden era of, Broadway musicals and stuff like that. And the premise is a couple of doctors played by Keegan-Michael Key and Cecily Strong are they have like they're 3-4 years into a relationship, and they're having a little bit of like relationship troubles. And so they go on like a couple's retreat out in the woods and somewhere, and they get lost and stumble into the town of Schmigadoon, which is a very like almost Wizard of Oz-esque setting kind of thing, but like the town is basically like the town from the Music Man or something like that, or Oklahoma, or like it is that classic kind of like like very cheesy musical by today's standards and stuff. But these characters are modern day characters going into this. The woman really loves those musicals. The guy really hates those musicals. That kind of like premise and story. And they walk into town and they're like, "Where are we?" And suddenly like this musical number for Schmigadoon opens up, and it is like a very clear riff on the Oklahoma song from Oklahoma. And and there's just a ton of that. It is like every episode has a few of those kinds of like, if you know the musical theater references they're making, it is extra hilarious. Other than that, it is just like a very funny kind of fish out of water story. And they're trying to figure out, how do we get out of this town? What do we like? What is going on here? What is really happening? And one of the elements that I really love about it is that a lot of the actors who are like the performers in the town, because like they walk in, they think, oh, this is like a colonial Williamsburg. It is not. It is like, this town is just a magical place. And it's almost like they're cursed and have to kind of like get over their stuff to get out of the town, basically. But like the mayor of the town is Alan Cumming, who, you know, while we may know him from we know him from like Nightcrawler and stuff, but like he is very well renowned on Broadway and stuff like that, having played the MC from Cabaret and stuff like that. He is and he's having a great time as the mayor of Schmigadoon.
Oh my gosh, that's awesome.
The one of the other so there's like a young rapscallion kind of like no good guy who's like the town. He's the town troublemaker, but you know, you kind of get the sense that he's got a heart of gold or something like that. That is played by Aaron Tveit, who I first think I knew from like the musical Next to Normal, but I believe he was also in the Catch Me If You Can musical on Broadway. Another like very well-renowned Broadway performer, and he's very much like your Curly from your Curly / Will from Oklahoma, mixed in with like a little bit of the shyster from the Music Man, who's Harold Hill. He's a little bit of he's that kind of character. He's clearly going to be like the love interest type character for like Cecily Strong's character is kind of what his whole shtick is. But it's so and then Kristen Chenoweth is the very uptight. She's the head of the Mothers Against the Future organization. That is she is super religious. So she and she's like very high strung and that kind of. She is that type of character. Again, like she has like an archetype that is very much pulled from like the Music Man and those kinds of musicals and stuff. Mm-hmm. So so the fact that they filled out like the supporting cast, like even the mayor's wife is a performer, Anne Harada, who I know from, she played Christmas Eve in Avenue Q on Broadway and stuff like that. So
okay.
So like it is filled to the brim with like musical theater people in the musical theater kind of roles.
That's awesome.
And so yeah, I'm just having a ton of fun with it. It is a very fun, like satirical / a little bit of cynical look at those kinds of musicals, and how people would react if they were suddenly thrust into that kind of musical. You can watch like a clip that's out there of like them, like the town singing about corn pudding, which is like one of the meals that they can get in the town kind of thing. It's just a very funny, weird, like very schlocky kind of musical, but it's a ton of fun. I'm having a great time with it. So it's right up my alley. I highly recommend checking that out if you are a fan of like the classical era of Broadway musicals, or if you have at any point been a fan of those kind of classical era of musicals and like me are kind of like ready to never see those musicals again. It's a fun
Kristen
kind
Chenoweth's in it. Oh, awesome.
Yeah, that's what I was saying. Yeah, she's in there. So I saw her doing an interview with Seth Meyers, where she basically announced that she has at some point in the series an 18-page patter song, a la we got trouble, my friends, trouble tea with, and that rhymes with a P and that starts with pool right here in River City kind of thing that they did
No
that they do
way.
all in one take. So
No way.
that episode has not aired yet. I've not seen that episode yet. But like I am super looking forward to whenever they get to that and she's doing that, because it is like it's the whole town with her and they do it all in one take. Barry Sonnenfeld is the director of these, so yeah, it is a ton of fun. Very, very like a love letter / send up to that era of musical theater. I mean, like one of the other like main characters is basically like ripped straight out of like Seven Brides from Seven Brothers, along with a whole bunch of like all of her sisters, like the fathers. There's even like little throwaway gags. Like there's a character in the town that is like a throwaway, like you see him for like a shot and it is very clearly like a Judd Fry character from Oklahoma and stuff like that. So and there's like funny little recurring gags where the poor mailman Pete is constantly getting like shot or hit, and so like somebody will shoot a gun or they'll throw a rock or something and you'll just hear this ow off screen, and they'll just always say like sorry Pete, and then occasionally you see Pete like pop up in frame and he's just got bruises and stuff all over him. It's just like fun little running gags and bits and stuff like that. I'm having a great time.
I'm gonna have to check that out. That sounds awesome.
Because I think you hit the nail on the head where like the show just itself sounds like a lot of fun, but this sounds a show that's so for you, like just right up your alley.
Mm-hmm. I tweeted out Oklahoma was the first show I ever did when I started getting into theater back in high school. And so yeah,
I never did Oklahoma. Like I've done a big thing to note is like I've never really done, like in my short time doing theater, I never really did that quote unquote golden era of theater. The only thing I ever think that I would say I came close to doing was Pirates of Penzance. Mm-hmm. But even then, that's not explicitly.
That's like Gilbert and Sullivan typically like falls outside because they do more operetta stuff like that.
Yeah.
But like I mean like when I think of these kinds of shows, it is like and they like the characters, the Keegan-Michael Key and the Cecily Strong character know these musicals, and so they're making fun of, and like there's a moment where like Keegan-Michael Key's trying to figure out the age of somebody, and Cecily Strong makes a like, yeah, that's a Liesel thing. That is a 16 going on 29 kind of like ingenue character from like making a reference to Sound of Music and stuff like that. So
nice.
It's just rife with like a ton of like very overt but then also very subtle like fun references and stuff like that, and I'm just having a great time with it. And then the other one that I sat down and watched I believe it's 10 episodes in the first season, then I watched like the first episode of season 2 that just came out, is Ted Lasso. After seeing many internet friends rave about this show, and that's Schmigadoon is definitely much more up my alley, but Ted Lasso is also just a very great show. The thing that I did not know that I talked about a little bit before we started recording going into this is that alongside Jason Sudeikis, Bill Lawrence is the co-creator of the show, and Bill Lawrence is the guy behind Scrubs and Spin City and Cougar Town. So he has like a great like repertoire of shows behind him as well. And so like that's one of those things of like, oh, if I'd known Bill Lawrence was connected to this, I probably would have hopped on this even sooner. But for those unfamiliar with Ted Lasso, the premise on that one is very very folksy football coach from Kansas, Ted Lasso, gets suddenly uprooted and hired to be the coach of a soccer team in a football team in England, Richmond AFC, I think is the team that he's coaching out there. I'm pretty sure they're all like fictionalized versions, but it's basically he's suddenly coaching the Premier League. And the premise of the show is a little bit, if you're familiar with the movie from like the 80s, Major League, where like the owner is basically trying to like bury the team and kind of thing. Like it's a little bit of that, different motivations. Like she's not doing it like for financial gain or whatever. She's doing it because her ex-husband, who was caught like cheating around and everything like that, she owns the team now, and the team was the only thing he ever loved, so she wants to destroy the only thing he ever loved. And
so she hires a football coach from Kansas.
Yeah, she hires a guy to completely like fail at every step of the turn, and she like but he is as we've kind of touched on and other people have said before us, Snowbike Mike incarnate. Basically, he is like incredibly super positive, and that's like he is continually speaking in folksy aphorisms and stuff like that, and just optimism. Optimism incarnate. So it's a delightful tale, because it is that mixed up against like every other character in the show is like a cynic Brit, and so can that like, you know, Midwestern optimism break through British cynicism. And how does that happen over the course of this series? I enjoyed it. It's a lot of fun. It is a little too cheesy for me at times, but like overall, like I had a smile on my face the entire. I mean, I was completely content and happy to binge watch the entire show yesterday. So, I was having a good time with it, and the way that Jason Sudeikis' character butts up against a lot of the other characters is a lot of fun throughout, and the struggles that he's kind of also dealing with internally, they don't flare up. They're not like really thrust to the forefront, but they do pop up every now and then throughout the course of the series, and you kind of get a sense of like the man behind the constant positivity and stuff like that, and you know, sometimes some of the pain that he's going through as well is a lot of fun. I remember seeing like everybody raving about the show, and it wasn't until like a month or so ago that I started seeing in my like recommended like YouTube videos, the character of Ted Lasso is basically like inspired from like NBC sports stuff from like the Olympics 8 years ago or something like that. And it's the same character. So it was like a series of like YouTube sketches basically to promote the Olympics that has turned into a full-fledged Apple TV show. So
That's wild.
Like if you want to watch those to get a sense of like who this character is and stuff like that, you can certainly do that out there like free on YouTube. But yeah, then it turned into this, you know, very heartwarming, like feel good kind of show, and it is very much like a feel good. It like, I'm only thinking of this right now, but it is probably the exact opposite of BoJack Horseman. And I love BoJack Horseman, and I liked Ted Lasso, so like there's room for both of those in like the streaming landscape of things. But yeah, Ted Lasso, very, very cute. Highly recommended on the Apple TV Plus, especially if you take up that you know, free 6 months offer. And then yeah, Ted Lasso season 2 just like it just started this week. They do like Apple is doing the like, hey, we do like one, you know, weekly episodes and stuff like that. So like that's why I'm like, okay, well now I'm at least locked in for the next, you know, couple months to continue watching Schmigadoon and as well as Ted Lasso season 2. But then I'm also going to probably hop into like Mythic Quest and see how that show is, because that seems like another one right up my alley. You know, behind the scenes, like an office, but for a video game company kind of thing. But also, it is heavily influenced by Ubisoft, and Ubisoft kind of sucks a lot. As a lot of the industry sucks a lot, so that's unfortunate. But yeah, so those are my kind of my broad thoughts on Schmigadoon and Ted Lasso. Looking forward to seeing where both of those continue to go. Because yeah, the other thing I tweeted out was basically like I played soccer like until I played on the JV team in high school, my freshman year of high school, and then they basically were like, hey, we don't have enough funding, so it's just going to be a varsity team next year. And like it was the sport that like a lot of the football players played in the off season to like stay active and stuff. So they were pretty much guaranteed spots on the team, and I was not going to make it outside of JV. So I was like, all right, well, I'm just going to go peace out and do the arts then. And so it was like, I played soccer until I started doing theater and stuff like that, and choir. And so like, these are like a perfect embodiment of like Trevor up until the age of like 30.
Nice.
So,
that's awesome.
Yeah. So yeah, those are my thoughts on Schmigadoon and Ted Lasso. Let's throw it back over to you, Cam, because you have some thoughts on both some Stardew Valley stuff that you've been doing, as well as your GTA NoPixel updates.
Yeah, so while I've been streaming, I decided, getting back into streaming after being sick for a while, I needed a game that I could kind of like, have some fun with. And I thought, hey, I really love Stardew Valley. I wonder what's going on with that. And I saw a YouTube video. What really popped this into my head was I saw a YouTube video of like some mod that somebody did for it. And I was like, oh, modding Stardew Valley. Like I remember back when the game came out, previously that was something that happened. But like the mods really weren't that important. Like you could change around portraits and stuff, and I did. But there wasn't like a lot of content for it back then. Shoot forward a couple years, and they have a new mod out. Somebody put together a new mod called Stardew Valley Expanded. And the expanded mod essentially not only does it give a new kind of like breathes new life into the game with a bunch of additional things and updates and whatnot, and of course the updates that Stardew Valley has just received over the years. Mm-hmm. But what it really did was it also introduces new characters that instead of it just be like, oh, here's like a cool farmer or a cool character, it goes back into kind of like the idea of a lot of the like what a lot of characters in the game are revolving around is kind of like a theme to small towns, small farms, mountain living. I think Lewis is Thoreau is a great character who you would think is, oh, he's the hobo of the town who lives in the mountains. But when you actually get to know him, you realize that he's like very much, he's a naturalist. He believes in minimalism. He works to live in harmony with nature. And he in his whole shtick is basically, he is considered a member of the community who is welcomed and appreciated. And kind of like his journey in the game is revolving around that kind of like, you don't have to be have a home to have a home in Stardew Valley. And so it's great. Your friendship with him is really great. At one point in time, he's like, if you asked me to live on your, would you ever ask me to live on your farm? And the correct answer is to say that he wants to hear is no, because you respect his way of life. And that gives you like a bonus in your relationship with him. And if you don't say that, or if you say, yeah, of course I would, or do you want to come live with me on my farm right now? He explains to you, you don't understand, what I'm about, what my life is about. I'm not a homeless person. I'm not somebody who, you should be, pitying. I've chosen this life for myself. And so, that's a character that's in the original Stardew Valley game. That same kind of concept and core around the character design was inspired other people. And one of them is, so one of the characters that gets introduced is a character named Andy, who is he's another small farmer, but he is specifically part of a JoJo corporate, farm process, and learning to farm through JoJo methods, not natural methods. And this idea of corporate farm subsidiaries, and the idea of the farms that are currently out there right now that exist out there today that aren't part of a massive corporate structure, have to buy into it and have to take these, sub rates, lower rates at a loss, operating at a loss. And it's really hard for farmers today, who aren't part of larger corporate owned farms. And so it's a commentary on that. There's, but what it also does is it expands the map out. Makes it feel, so it's not just a small little nestled community in the small area, but gives it a much larger area. And one of the additional mods that I got it's called Grandpa's Farm. And it's essentially 4 times the size of a regular farmstead. It takes your farmstead, turns it into 4 times its size, but also gives it much more life to it. There is, it feels like clearing out your field to plant takes more than a day. It's just massive. It's enormous.
I mean,
and it's
it takes
great.
way longer. It takes me way more than a day to do it in the base game too. So I don't know what kind of magic you're trying to do that you're clearing the whole farm out on day one.
No, not the whole farm. I'm referring to just the field in front of your home.
Okay.
The areas where you learn to clear rocks and cut weeds and stuff. Anyway, I digress. But to the point is that it makes this massive farm that it's fun to explore through. Parts of it are locked off because you have to upgrade your tools to it. And so like there's a lot of like feeling of area of progress as you're just like clearing your way through your farmstead, and like and it really feels like a much more of a it feels much larger than it originally is. And that's just additional mod that's on it. But there's a lot of stuff that goes into it, and it just feels great. And it's fun playing Stardew Valley again. And so I started streaming it just recently. Used it as an audible when I couldn't log on to NoPixel because server was full. So
it's like every now and then I think about like trying to hop back into Stardew Valley, because like I played basically the story of the original game when it came out. Like got to basically day 1 of year 3, I think, when it was like, your grandfather's like, "You done good, kid," or whatever. And like even you talking about like expanding your farm, I'm like, I don't think like I ever got to the point where I was like, oh, my farm is like, I was never looking for more room on my farm.
Same.
My farm was like probably, half of it was probably going to waste because I just wasn't like I wasn't putting crops everywhere, or I had like I leaned into doing the animals and stuff. And it's the kind of thing like, especially in like a Harvest Moon, or now the Seasons of Story of Seasons. Those at least do the thing where like, hey, time stops when you're indoors, but Stardew Valley never did. So I've always felt like even more on that time crunch, and I was just like, I can't do a lot of the things I want to do, so I'm going to prioritize, helping out JoJo Mart, or not JoJo Mart, helping out the community center, or going down in the dungeon or into the caves for a day or two or something like that, and then like using the sprinklers to help on the farm when I needed. But I definitely never felt like I needed more space on the farm. So the fact that you're out there like trying to do a farm with 4 times the space, I'm like, all right, go crazy, Cam, go nuts, have fun.
Well, what it really does is it combines. I wouldn't say it's like, sorry, I shouldn't say it's 4 times the size. It's not that large, but it sometimes feels that way. But what it's done is it gives you like a lot of the natural stuff that you got from the base farm. And Trevor doesn't know this or didn't experience this because he didn't keep playing it as often as I did over the years, which was like the expanded farms, the different kind of farm types you could get. So like there's the forest farm, which is mostly focused on lumber. There's the river farm, which has like rivers to fish in, and it takes a lot of those different elements and puts it all into one farmstead, and it does a really great job of it. I like it's super enjoyable. It's super fun. And it's just great having like a very, very different kind of farmstead to be running. That makes it a lot of fun. So
cool.
Yeah, love it. You love it. Also, once again, I picked a dog because if you pick a cat, I don't understand it.
That's fair. So tell us about the updates in NoPixel land. I hopped in, caught you mid crime spree the other day. So yeah.
Hold on. Like being a lookout for somebody who's dealing Oxycontin is not it's not a crime spree. Thank you very much.
It's far more of a crime spree than a tow truck driver singing "Gotta know when to tow 'em, know when to tow 'em, know when to tow and toe to toe."
See, I would say that's not what I've sung, but I know for a fact I've sung those exact words before.
Pretty much.
Yeah. No. I finished towing for the day. I was going to be riding my bike up to go do something, and I got hit by somebody, and which is like not uncommon. Like it happens. Accidents happen in the city.
Yeah,
especially the GTA world. Yeah,
as we talked last time, I watched you run down a guy and then kindly take him to the hospital.
Yeah, that happens, and I was fine afterwards. I was like, okay, he barely he was not going too fast. And
after this guy hit you is what you're saying.
Yeah. After this guy hit me, and he was like, oh, and he goes, hey, you want to do an oxy run? And I was like, you know what? Sure. He's like, yeah, have you ever run oxy before? I was like, no, I don't even know how the process works. And he showed me the ropes, but it was also my character has been on a slow decline into depravity, where he's
been selling illegal fish and illegally gained skins and stuff like that. Animal pelts.
Yeah, animal pelts. Yeah, I've been doing some under the not illegal, completely legal things. And so like this is just kind of like my like the next step, and it's like I was wondering, I was like, yeah, I have all these bills that I got to clean, that I got to get through, that I have to like be able to like convert into being like rolls or like bands of bills, which is just like cash bills that are banded together, and convert them into actual money. And I was like, how should I do that? And like I'm like, and someone told me like, well, you really have to do it through Oxy runs. And I was like, oh, okay. I'm like, but I don't know how to do that. And it's like, I guess I could wait and ask to this guy who I know who does them sometimes. But this was just like a coincidence. It's like, oh, okay, sure. Made a new friend, cool guy. Like really just needed a partner to be lookout and help him out and make sure he didn't get robbed by other players. And so like we palled up. He showed me the ropes. Made some good money off of it, and like it was a good day. It was a good day to be Rev Cabot on NoPixel. So.
Yeah, I loved hearing you kind of tell that story of like, oh yeah, it's like just very nonchalantly, oh yeah, that like because I came in again mid you doing this run already or whatever, and you being like, oh yeah, this guy hit me, and so now we're doing this crime together, and I was like, oh yeah, what I put in the chat like, you always figure that like somebody hitting you with a car is going to change your life, but you probably don't ever think it's going to lead you into a life of crime like that. And that's exactly what happened with Cam.
Yep, it was fun.
Yeah,
I gotta learn.
You found that guy out in the sticks that basically will buy anything from you. I saw that.
The fence. I had a great time with it. I'm really excited to keep playing. I haven't been able to play the last few days just because like the arthritis in my hand makes playing anything like just an absolute nightmare.
Mm-hmm.
Also, like it was my brother-in-law's birthday yesterday, so we spent most of the day like doing things with him. And the day before, I was getting things together for work that I start tomorrow. So
cool.
Yeah.
All right. Well then, lastly, we will close out here with your kind of stuff, Frank. You, in addition, so you have like Astrobot thoughts. Again, because you were the last of the team that I ended up securing a PS5 for. So you've gotten through that now, as well as you've been playing the racing game Wreckfest. Yeah. So yeah, tell us about your thoughts on Astrobot now that you are like among the rest of us that have played it on the PS5.
Yeah. Oh no. I think I pretty much agree with all of the kind of the common opinion out there that it is a great game. I had a lot of fun with it. It was the first thing I loaded up, like because it was just on there.
Mm-hmm.
And even though even though I had installed some other games during that kind of the process of getting the PS5 set up, I was like, oh, that's a quick little thing, and it'll show off the haptic. Like, let me go and check that out. And then, like, right out the gate, like, in the opening menu, it starts messing with the haptics, like, in the controller. And that's when I had that moment where I was like, oh, shit. Like, because that was the first time it had ever done anything. Because, like, the whole time you're going through the menus to set it up, it doesn't vibrate or, like, really. So that was cool. And then just playing through the whole game, like, on the one hand, it is just a fun game. But on the other hand, it is this just like amazing demo for the haptic feedback that has all these really creative uses for the haptics and some of the other features in the controller. And then ultimately, besides that, it ends up just being like this love letter to PlayStation. And like playing through it, like it definitely makes me take like a step back and realize like I was like, wow, PlayStation means so much to me.
Mm-hmm.
Like, and it's a thing like we maybe don't even think about, but like there's just all these references throughout the entire game that I enjoyed and just make me smile and I would stop and look at. And then there's even jokes, and even the trophies are references, and like they're like everything is references. And then you're on like the collectibles are literally like PlayStation history, to the point where like it just like, and like when I knew some of these things were in there, but even when I'm actually going through it, I'm like, man, they went deep on this. And like when you're going through some of the items, like, yeah, there's a PS1, PS2, PS3, PS4, and the redesigns, and you're like, oh, sure. But then it's like, this is the PSP camera,
Mm-hmm.
like the add-on that you play. And I was like, oh, shit. Like,
yeah, here's the PS1 multi-tap controller adapter, so you could play 4 players on the original PlayStation.
Yep.
And I love that. Like, and it looks perfect, exactly like how it should be. And you can spin it around in the little model. And some of them have like, if it has buttons, like on the PS1, you can hit it and the PS1 opens.
Yep.
Like you can actually like play with it. Like, That was just stuff that I was definitely all about. And like I got like all the references. There was one I didn't understand what it was. I stood there for like a minute like trying to figure it out. I ended up Googling it. It was Demon Souls.
Oh, it was the Demon
Like,
Souls one?
yeah, it was because I just don't know Demon Souls that much. And if it was a guy in like knight's armor, I might have gotten it. But it was a guy with it's a sword on the ground and he's like kneeling and the guy's there, and that was way over my head.
Yeah.
Like, but I found it. Like, but like all these little references I loved, and even like seeing Patapon like scribbled on the wall, and I stopped and I stared at that for a second. I was like, is this a Patapon? Like, this is supposed to be Patapon? Like, and yeah, like there was just all those little things I loved. The one things I kind of wanted to shout out real quick, because I know I loved all the references, but my favorite in terms of it being obscure was Pain. Because I definitely got that as a reference, and I felt like I had the perfect setup for it, where I walked up and I saw the little astrobot in the slingshot and my camera wasn't showing the wall.
Yeah.
So I was like, oh, I can hit him out, and I hit him out and I like pan over and it just says Pain, and I was like, oh my god, that was a Pain reference. Like, and then like so that was my favorite in terms of being obscure, and my favorite in terms of just being super well done was the Gravity Rush one. Like that was one where I walked up and I just see this astrobot with a blonde wig like floating upside down on the side of this wall, and I stopped and I was like, that's supposed to be Gravity Rush, huh?
Yeah.
And I'm just watching her like, and then she like drops and falls down off the side, and I was like, that's so awesome. Like,
yeah. I love that. Like those are like within like a minute of each other, also in the same.
Are
level.
they?
yeah. Those two that you mentioned. Yeah.
Those were the ones that.
And it's
like,
also
I
the
just
one
loved.
like that same level has like the Final Fantasy VII, like the Buster Sword there that like everybody's like around and revering, and then if you like tilt the camera around it, you'll get the same kind of spotlight that the original Final Fantasy VII game had on it and stuff. Yeah.
And I also like, and similar in vein to that, which is another great one, is all the monster hunters sitting around the campfire, like doing their thing. Like, and then the other one I loved just in terms of something that like is a franchise that I love now was Devil May Cry, because you have Dante shooting the jester with the pistols, and he's using like the aim pistols, like the PS Move pistols. And I was like, there's so many layers to this right now. And that was another one that like I loved. Like,
yeah,
it was great, man.
Yeah, it was that game is so much fun, and I think back to when I first sat down and played it, and got to the end of the original PlayStation world, like the first PlayStation world, and like the sound comes in, like because the end area of each of those is like just a love letter to like the UI of the thing or whatever. It's like, which is a weird thing to have a love letter to, but like just hearing that original like Sony music, the boom kind of like that sound, just I was like, I started crying. I was like, I did not realize, like you said, like how much I love PlayStation, how much it means to me, and just like how ingrained some of those like memories are of just like hearing that brings back a flood of emotion. And getting that across like the PS2 and PS3 and so on, kind of like all that stuff. I was just like, that's like I every time I think about that game, I think like, shame on Nintendo for never giving us a game with that much love and attention to detail and care behind it. For like the closest you get is like a Smash that just has like, here's all the characters and stuff like that. But like they don't have like, they're not.
That's just Sakurai. That's Sakurai's love letter to Nintendo.
And that's like that is
itself.
as close as you'll get is what Sakurai is doing, and specifically like what he does in his like his like unveil trailers and stuff like that, or like the especially with like the spirits. There'll be like a fun like meta thing with some of those things, but like it like even that I think pales in comparison to the attention that gets put into Astrobot, and I look forward to seeing like where that series continues with that team and what they continue to do with that. Not only that character, but like I hope they just get to continue to have fun with it like they did there.
I honestly think that like Frank, I did not think anything of it. It wasn't until after I had finished playing Astrobot that I was like, wow, I love PlayStation. I love, like, if you would ask me, oh, Cameron, do you love PlayStation? I'd be like, well, yeah, like they're awesome consoles. They're a great company. Like it's cool. But I would never have told you, oh yeah, like I have intricate young memories that helped form me into the person I am because of the games that I played on these systems. And to the level of like, I didn't have, like, I wasn't the PlayStation kid. I was the N64 kid the kid who lived next door to my great aunt who lived around the block from me, and was a PlayStation kid. And so he had a PlayStation, and we played, originally he was a Sega Genesis kid, but when the PlayStation came out, he got a PlayStation, not an N64. And we played so many games together on his original PlayStation. And Josh, if you're out there watching this, like, I love you, brother. Care about you. You're a great guy today, and you were an amazing friend back then. Even though, like, to be honest, we were both little shits. Just like these amazing memories that I have of, like, you know, like I loved at the moment Ape Escape pulled up.
Yeah.
Anything Ape Escape popping up was like, I was like 100% on board, but like just so many great memories I had of it. And I think the loss of it, why I stopped thinking of myself as a PlayStation kid was, you know, I was too poor to afford a PS3. Like, that's what it comes down to. Yeah. Like back in the day when it was like, I can't wait to try to convince my parents that they should get me a PS3, and it being like $600 and being like, well, that's never happening. And like, I don't know, like, it was just such a, like, that nostalgia run that you have with Astrobot is just such a great time. And I'm happy I heard you say it, Frank. Like, you don't realize until the moment you're playing through it, you're like, oh wow, I really love PlayStation.
Yeah.
I really, like, these things actually really matter to me. They care. Like that, and it's amazing what Trevor said. Like, yeah, Nintendo doesn't do this stuff. No game company does this stuff. PlayStation has a unique ability of being like a significantly older company than Xbox and Microsoft, but not to the point of we'll never like, you know, we don't celebrate anything about ourselves in Nintendo. Because even when marketing says it's the 25th anniversary, the actual Nintendo production team says, cool, here's like nothing related to it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Even that, like, it's fascinating to think now, because like they're obviously, Xbox is celebrating like the 20th anniversary of Xbox this year. Mm-hmm. And like, you go back to the first PlayStation experience, and that was celebrating the 20th anniversary of PlayStation. So like, we're only about 6 years removed between those two companies really getting into the gaming space. But then, yeah, you have like Nintendo has, you know, them both beat by another 10 years or whatever.
Longer than that, much longer than that.
I mean, like, Nintendo certainly as a company was around.
Oh, sure. But I was saying,
like, I guess like 15 years, what, like, because 83 was when the Famicom hit. Yep. Versus, it's about, because PlayStation was 94, 95 somewhere. I think it made its way to US in end of 94, maybe something like that.
No, it was 95. It came out in 95.
Okay, so yeah, then PSX, the first PSX at the end of 2014 was celebrating 20 years of the PlayStation in Japan. But yeah, like, even that. So I mean, it's just barely 10 years more on the Nintendo side of things, but it feels that much more because, I mean, that was a significant 10 years, and the, you know, competitor of Sega that was around at that same time, not really in the game anymore. Like, obviously they still do software stuff, but very, very long removed from the hardware market. But yeah, Astrobot is a ton of fun. As somebody, because I'm the only one of us that played the VR game, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So even that is getting a lot of love in Astrobot, because like the other characters from that, and like the bosses of that game are like included in the references. Like the Shadow of the Colossus guy in Astrobot is, you know, a big boss fight from the original game kind of thing. It's a big monster kind of thing. And there's a bird character that you get that is basically the bird dog from The Last Guardian. The spider character that you can see in like the little Spider-Man reference in one of those levels is another, you know, big boss fight from the VR game. So like, even it's a love letter to PlayStation, but it's also like a love letter to their own other game, that they're like taking those characters and figuring out how to recontextualize them for this, this bigger PlayStation audience. And I really loved how they do a great job of incorporating all that stuff. So yeah, shout out to Astrobot. So then take us home, Frank, with your thoughts on Wreckfest.
Yeah, so then this was what I kind of fired up after I beat Astrobot, then I fired this up, and then I kind of went back and got the platinum in Astrobot. So now it's out of order on my trophy list, and the OCD kind of bothers me. And I might go back to Wreckfest just to pop a trophy, just to move it in the chain. But it's like, but Wreckfest is a really fun racing game. It came out multiple years ago. It came out in like 2017, 2018, and I had my eyes on it then because it was a fun game. People were playing on like YouTube and Twitch and stuff. And since then, they've just added more content to it, and then they eventually made this next gen upgraded version. That the main reason I was kind of curious about, because I love arcade racing games, and one thing I was like, man, haptics, like after experiencing them in Astrobot, I was like, I definitely want this in like a racing game, and I definitely think Wreckfest delivers, because not only is it just a fun racing game, like the haptics in particular are like really, really, really good. Where like there's just these moments where like, because so I got back one step backwards. Wreckfest is the kind of racing game where it is an arcade racer, but it's not like Forza or like Need for Speed where you have like McLarens and like supercars and stuff. Wreckfest is totally that, like, this is a junkyard car that like we welded together and you can slam into people, and all the cars besides having all the other stats you would normally have on your car, it has like health, and you can totally just wreck out opponents. And there was actually a race that I was the only one that finished.
Nice.
And like so that there's some fun moments like that, and there's definitely there was also some races I got DNF'd because some asshole hit me, and I was really mad about it, especially because you guys know how racing games work. Like when I'm in the lead for 2 laps, and like sometimes they design the courses so they intersect, and the guy in last like T-bones me and takes me out of the race, and I get DNF'd, and now I'm in 12th place. Like, but besides that, like it's just, I wanted to set it up that it's like that kind of like junkyard. So there's a lot of off-road racing, and then there's also some track racing, but you're still using those same kind of like rough cars. But that's where I think the haptics really shine, is because like there's some of these courses where you're like driving around in these rough muscle cars, and like the engine backfires because it's like an old car, and when it backfires, the haptics in the controller like push and like backfire. And when I'm like when I'm like flooring it, it's like, and I'm trying to think of the right setup for this, but so basically like I'm about to go into a turn and I'm like flooring it, and I like grab the joystick and kind of grab the wheel and go to the left, and I'm trying to make this turn, and I'm like steering, and like in the game audio, my tires are like squealing, but I can feel in the haptics, like on the side of the controller, like where that tire would be, it's like vibrating like crazy because this tire is like dragging across the pavement. And then at the same time, like I on this like oversteer, I go off the road. So the left part of my car is like on the road, like drifting basically. And then the other part of my car is going off road. But now the right side of the controller is like bumping because I'm going off road. But the left side of the controller is like vibrating because it's like a tire dragging across pavement. And like these two things are happening at the same time, and I can distinctively feel both of them and like where they are on the positions of like where the car would be. And then bringing up the backfire thing again, and then my engine backfires, and then that happens on top of it. Like that's what really even pushed the showcase of like the haptics farther for me, is because like not only is it just doing like 1 or 2 cool things, it's doing like 4 of them at the same time, and I can uniquely tell you all of these different feelings I'm feeling in my hands, and it feels so natural. Because it feels like, yeah, this is exactly what this would feel like. And now I'm like, I don't know if I could ever play a racing game without these haptics. Like, because this is just like, it feels like I don't even want this to sound like an ad, but I'm like, man, like I never thought that like the haptic feedback of vibrating in the controller could make you more immersed like that in like such a simple, small way. But it's like, it really, I felt like showcased it so well. And I definitely want to give a shout out to those devs, because like, whoever got the assignment to do haptics like knocked it out of the park. And besides that, it's just a fun racing game. And like the only thing I have against the actual game is like if you do the campaign, it just gets like too drawn out and repetitive. Like there's only so many courses and so many cars, and it just repeatedly, like I did the same courses over and over and over and over and over. And some of the tournaments, like And it starts out where it's like 3 laps on this course, and then in the middle tiers it's like 6 laps, and then the last tier, the second to last one, has these like insane 12-lap races that go on for like over 10 minutes, and it's just like I've already done this course dozens of times because of the other tournaments, and for whatever reason their second to last like tournament bracket just drags the game out where it extends all of these races to be 12 laps, and then like it's kind of like Forza where you go into that racing tier and then there's all the different challenges you can do with the different car types and like different race setups on different tracks. But so when you go into it and then there's like, okay, this is a tournament, so there's 6 races. You have to do 12 laps on like each one, and that one tournament takes forever.
Mm-hmm.
And like that's where like the end of the game like just comes to a halt, and I was already tired of like being on some of these tracks, and then now it's making me do it like double the amount of time. And then for whatever reason, that's the second to last tournament in the campaign. The last tournament just goes back to like 3 to 6 laps. They're like, all right, whatever. We dragged your time out enough. Like, because I was worried that the whole last tournament was going to be worse. And no, it's easier. It's more fun. And it really felt like somebody was like, our campaign's not long enough. And they just went into the second to last tournament and like extended everything way the hell out way too long. And like, that's a huge gripe I do have against the game. But other than that, it's just a fun racing game, and it nails the haptics. And if anyone picked it up on PS Plus and hasn't checked it out, I would recommend downloading it and just playing around with it.
Nice. Oh, is that one? Was it one of the PS Plus games?
Yep, it was one of the free PS5, PS Plus games. So that's how I picked it up. And I like, because that was one of those things of like, I've been watching this game for years, but I haven't played it. And it was like, oh, when it goes on sale, I'm going to play that. And then I never got around to it. So when they were like, hey, it's free, I was excited to finally dive in.
Nice. Yeah, it's very cool. I'm glad you had a great time with it. And I'm glad that yeah, it gave you like a great feel of the haptics, especially because like I know that's something Cam has been very eager and clamoring to get, like games that are playing around with those haptics more. The next one I'm probably like really looking forward to, I think we've talked a couple times, is like Deathloop. Especially when that gets into like, oh, you're gun jammed, and so now the triggers are going to be messing with you and stuff like that. So,
I can't wait for that.
Yeah,
super stoked.
Similar to that, that's why I don't know when I'll get to it, but that's why I kind of want to pick up the last Call of Duty, is because I heard they did a lot of really great stuff with the haptics, and each gun feels different, and like how it would kind of feel towards that gun. And so I mean, like that just kind of sounds interesting too, so I kind of want to play around with that.
Cool. Well, I'm glad you're having a good time with it. It's always fun, especially you, Frank. I think more than any of the rest of us bring these like you dive into the games that are a little bit more outside of any of our other wheelhouses. So yeah, I don't think any of us would have jumped into Wreckfest, but like hear you talk about it and get excited for it. I'm like, that's really cool that you had a great time with that. Like I'm excited for like Forza Horizon 5 later this year on Xbox, but that's like purely for the visuals. I know that playing on the Xbox controller, I'm not going to have any of that kind of like tangible feedback stuff that goes into that. So and any of that rumble. So I'm just gonna I'll miss those elements while I'm playing it and be like, oh, I wish I were playing this on a DualSense. But
I had that same thought while I was playing Wreckfest though, because I was thinking about Forza Horizon, because I'm also very excited for that game, and I was like, oh, I'm not gonna be able to play this with the DualSense, and now I'm like hurt because like I really mean it. Like I don't know, it's gonna be hard, I think, to just go back to like a normal. I mean, I'll still play it and it'll be fine, but that is a feeling I have now. Like it's a thing that it feels so naturally that even though it's new, it feels like something I've always had, and now I don't want to let go of it. Like,
yeah. I think that is going to do it for this week's episode. Thank you guys for joining me to talk about all these fun little things. It's always a fun, even the diving in and hearing about your concert trip and Topgolf stuff. It's always fun catching up with you guys, especially because I believe, Frank, you mentioned you're going to be here in town next week, so we're gonna have to try and like have like a little like hangout, the three of us at a Portillo's or something next weekend. So
definitely
we'll definitely have to try and coordinate that. But that is going to do it for this week's episode. You can follow Frank at Irrelevant Jokes. Anything you want to give a shout out to there, Frank?
Yeah, I just want to give a quick shout out to our other podcast, That D Plus Show. We're still we're towards the end on the back half of our summer of Star Wars, and now we're in the sequel trilogy. The last episode we just put up is The Last Jedi, and I thought it was a great conversation. I feel like we all kind of fell on different sides of it, and I feel like we just got to have a great conversation, breaking all the different aspects down.
Yep. Cool. You can follow Cameron at Rev Cabot. Anything you want to give some love to there, Cam?
Yeah, I want to give a really big shout out to that D Plus show. We just did The Last Jedi. We are doing Rise of Skywalker to wrap up the great Skywalker saga. And the Last Jedi episode alone, almost 4 hours. So
3. It was a little over 3. It was not. It was closer to 3 than 4. But yes, it was a long one.
And the fact that we ended it without everybody saying everything they actually wanted to also say says a lot about it.
We did have to kind of like stumble to the finish line as my internet crapped out there at the end.
Yeah. But I think that it's great. I think that this has been an amazing time for us as a site to kind of like, enjoy the summer that we can enjoy with how things are in the world, and focus on something more positive. It's a great listen from episode 1 through episode 8. Episode 9 goes live this Friday. Come check it out. Enjoy that. So
cool. You can follow me at Trevor J. Starkey. I will echo the Summer of Star Wars on that D Plus show shout out that you guys have made. And I will also give a shout out to the Let's Plays that are going to go live this week. On Tuesday, I believe, I have me sitting down with Death's Door on Xbox. And then inspired by everybody getting excited for Psychonauts 2, I hopped into the first Psychonauts for the first time, and that'll go live on Thursday. Played through the first level of that one. That one definitely kind of feels its age a little bit, yeah. But yeah, the boot camp. I was like, oh, this definitely has a little bit of a feels like a PS2 era game behind it. But it was fun. I'm intrigued to continue. What's up, Frank?
No, I'm so excited that you finally dove in and were checking it out, like you had mentioned, because I know you had kind of mentioned before 2, I might go back and check out 1. So I'm so excited you checked it out, and I can't wait to see watch that and see your reaction. I love Psychonauts.
Yeah, it's one I listening to our friends over at the Kind of Funny Xcast talk about their time with Psychonauts 1 and 2 so far. I was like, oh, I obviously can play Psychonauts on backwards compatibility through on the Xbox, so maybe I'll check that out. But then I was like, but wait, I also bought the remaster that they did the PS2 version on the PS4 a couple years ago. So let me re-download that on my PS5 so I can at least maybe get a couple trophies out of it or something like that. And I did that. I have done a comparison after the fact. It definitely looks better. So whatever the Xbox hardware is doing to up-res games doesn't make it look incredibly modern, but it does look better on the Xbox than on the PlayStation. But I recorded my gameplay on the PlayStation, so oops. But yeah, it's interesting. We'll see if I stick it out and go back to it and continue playing it. But I'm certainly intrigued to hop into Psychonauts 2 when that comes out. At the end of basically about a month from now. So go check out those Let's Plays when they go live on the channel this week. You can follow all of us over at That Nerdy Site, or go to thatnerdysite.com for all the latest content from us. Once again, if you liked what you heard, please rate, review, subscribe, and maybe even consider sharing and supporting us over on Patreon at patreon.com/thatnerdysite, where every patron gets early access to a monthly bonus episode of this very show, which reminds me we need to sit down sometime before next weekend and record next month's episode. I'm thinking maybe we can sit down and do a game of the year so far kind of conversation or something like that. We'll try and figure that out. But we're gonna have to sit down and record that Tuesday or Wednesday. So yeah, stay tuned for that. As always, thank you for listening. Stay nerdy and be good to each other.